All right, let's talk about one of the biggest, longest running debates in the car world, Amsoil versus Mobil 1. Seriously, if you've ever been on a car forum or just hung out in a garage, you know people have strong opinions on this. It's a rivalry with die-hard fans on both sides, and today we're going to dig in and see what's really going on.
Yeah, this really says it all, doesn't it? For a lot of folks, this isn't just about picking a motor oil. It's a title fight. This quote from Nate's Interactive Auto just perfectly captures that energy. It feels like we're watching two heavyweights step into the ring for the championship belt. And this fight has been going on for a long, long time. We're talking decades. These two brands have built incredibly loyal followings. In one corner, you've got Mobil 1, the giant. It's backed by ExxonMobil, you can find it everywhere, and millions of people swear by it. And in the other corner, you have Amsoil, the company that actually gave us the first API-certified synthetic oil. It's got this reputation as a premium, top-tier product for the real enthusiasts. So that's the big question, right? If you strip away all the marketing, all the brand loyalty, all the heated arguments online, which oil actually performs better? You'd think there would be a simple answer, but as we're about to find out, it is anything but simple. So to really get to the bottom of this, we're not just going to look at one test. Nope, that wouldn't do this debate justice. We're going to break down three completely different attempts to crown a winner. We've got a simple bench test, a real-world analysis straight from a car's engine, and a super complex lab experiment. Each one tells a very different story. Okay, let's kick things off with the most direct approach you can take, a head-to-head friction test. The goal here is super simple. Which oil is better at stopping metal from grinding against metal? It's a physical challenge designed to measure just one thing: lubricity. And the method here is awesome because it's so easy to wrap your head around. First, you take two identical bearings. You weigh them on a super precise scale to get a starting point. Then, each bearing gets put on this machine that creates friction, all while being bathed in one of the oils. After the test is done, you just weigh them again. The logic is crystal clear. The oil that did a better job protecting the bearing means less metal got worn away, so that bearing will weigh more at the end. Simple. And here you can see the starting line. It's a totally fair fight. Both bearings weigh exactly 0.580 ounces. This is so important for a good test. You gotta control your variables. No head starts, no advantages. From here on out, it is all about performance. All right, so after its turn on the tester, the bearing using Mobil 1 is weighed. The final number, 0.578 ounces. That means it lost 0.02 of an ounce of metal from friction. Now, that might not sound like a lot, but inside your engine, tiny bits of wear like that add up over millions and millions of revolutions. So how did Amsoil do? And here we go. The Amsoil result. Its bearing finished at 0.579 ounces. It only lost 1,000th of an ounce. The difference is right there in the numbers. The bearing protected by Amsoil had literally half the amount of wear as the one with Mobil 1. So, in round one, the friction fight, we have a clear, decisive winner: Amsoil. It flat out protected the metal better. Based on this very simple, very direct test, the trophy goes to Amsoil. Debate over. Case closed. Right? Well, not so fast. A bench test is clean, it's controlled. But a real engine? That thing is a chaotic mess of extreme heat, crazy pressure, contaminants like fuel and soot, and wild temperature swings. So does protecting one little bearing at room temperature really tell you how an oil's going to perform in that hostile environment? That question leads us straight to our second test. Okay, for our second test, we're leaving the clean room and we're heading out into the real world. We're swapping the simple friction machine for the ultimate test rig, an actual car engine. Instead of measuring wear on a brand new bearing, this test is all about analyzing the used oil after thousands of miles of actual driving. And the person who ran this test, What I Can Know Joe 67, said it perfectly. They admit, look, this isn't some perfect, sterile experiment. There are tons of variables in daily driving you just can't control. But that's the whole point. The goal here isn't lab perfection, it's real-world results. What actually happens in the car you and I drive every single day? So how do you even measure engine wear by just looking at oil? Well, you look for something called wear metals. See, as an engine runs, microscopic bits of metal, iron from the cylinders, aluminum from the pistons, copper from the bearings, they all wear off and get suspended in the oil. A lab can take a sample of that used oil and measure exactly how much of each metal is in there. The more wear metals they find, the more wear your engine is experiencing. And what's wild about this lab report is just how close these numbers are. After about 6,100 miles on each oil, just look. Aluminum, which points to piston wear, is nearly identical. 5 parts per million for Amsoil, 4 for Mobil 1. Iron, and this is a big one for cylinder wear, is exactly the same at 6 parts per million. And copper, a sign of bearing wear, a dead heat, 2 parts per million for both. This chart just drives the point home. When you look at that critical iron content, the metal that literally makes up the guts of your engine, it's a statistical tie. According to this real-world test, both oils protected the engine in basically the exact same way. All of a sudden, that clear winner from our first test has vanished. And then, the real world throws in another huge variable, the price tag. At the time of this test, a quart of Mobil 1 was about $9. Amsoil was over 15. That is a massive difference. So if the real-world performance is pretty much the same, that nearly 70% price premium for Amsoil suddenly becomes a really big deal. So our first test gave us a winner. Our second test gave us a tie and a big question about cost. And that brings us to our third and final showdown. This one is an attempt to bridge that gap, to take the scientific control of the first test and mix it with the complexity of the second. This is the search for a perfect comparison. And this is where things just get insane. Just look at the list of things the creator, Tenza Motorsports, tried to control. Not just new oil, but used oil too. Not just one temperature, but hot, room temp, and freezing cold to simulate a winter start. They used custom-built machines and even modified their equipment to make sure everything was perfectly clean between runs. The level of detail here is just, wow.
But here's the reality check, and it comes straight from the tester himself. Even with all that incredible effort, it was a massive challenge. Things went wrong, equipment broke. Just resetting everything for each individual test run took forever. And that's not just a small detail, it's a huge finding. It shows that creating a perfect test that covers everything is pretty much impossible.
So, after a simple friction fight, a messy real-world report, and a super complex science experiment, what have we actually learned? Well, it turns out the biggest takeaway here might not be about the oil at all. It's about the tests themselves. This table really puts our whole journey into perspective. Each test told its own completely valid story. The friction fight, with its simple method, gave a clear win to Amsoil. The real-world report, by analyzing oil from an actual car, basically called it a draw. And the science lab, the most complicated of all, showed us that the winner can change completely depending on dozens of factors. The best oil in the cold might not be the best oil when it's hot. The best new oil might not be the best used oil. And that brings us to the real punchline. The search for one single best oil is a waste of time. There isn't one. The winner changes completely based on what you measure and how you measure it. The real lesson here is that the method is everything. The way you design a test, what you choose to focus on, and what you ignore is what actually determines the answer you're going to get. And that leaves us with one last thing to think about. The next time you see a video or an article that declares an absolute winner between two products, whether it's oil, tires, whatever, the most important question you can ask isn't who won. It's how did you test it? Thanks for watching.